I went from a failed lawyer to making over £100,000 a month from Airbnb properties I don't own. That didn't happen because I got lucky or took some insane risk. It happened because I realized early that the traditional idea of a stable career doesn't work the way it used to. Because here's what nobody tells you about the secure job. It's secure for everyone except you. It's secure for your employer. It's secure for the system. But for you, it's a cage, a very comfortable cage, but a cage nonetheless. You wake up, you go to work, you spend 8 hours. Actually, you spend around 10 hours doing something that doesn't matter to you. You come home exhausted, you eat dinner, you scroll through your phone, you go to bed, and you do it all again tomorrow. And you tell yourself it's worth it, that the salary is worth it, that the stability is worth it, that one day when you've climbed high enough, you'll finally have the freedom to do what you actually care about. But here's what I realized. By the time you finally have enough money to enjoy your life, you won't have the energy. You won't have the time. You'll be burnt out. Once I understood that, I stopped trying to climb these corporate ladders and put myself in control of my income. I'm Leena, and in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I went from a law school dropout to building a 6-figure per month business that gave me the freedom to live life on my own terms. Let's get into it. To understand how I got here, we need to go back to where it all started. I grew up in Coventry, which is a small city in the UK. My parents worked every single day, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And I remember my mom coming home exhausted, complaining constantly about how she's working all these hours for what? To just about look after me and my 2 other siblings. And this money barely had covered everyone. I remember hearing that frustration in her voice over and over again, and I felt it too. I felt the weight of it. I felt like I was a part of the problem, like I was one of the 3 children that she had to stretch the money for. It was about everything. It was about watching my parents work so incredibly hard with so much effort and still struggling to make ends meet. It was about seeing this massive gap about how much effort they put in and how little they got back, and that's when I noticed the trap, where you work hard, you do everything right, and still end up capped. My parents were trapped, and I could tell they were terrified I'd end up in the same way. So they had one solution for me, and that was education. They'd say to me, get good grades, go to university, become a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, something respectable, something safe, something that will guarantee you will never have to struggle the way we do. And I believed them completely. I genuinely thought if I just followed the formula, if I just did what I was supposed to do, everything would work out perfectly. I watched a lot of law shows on television growing up and thought maybe this would make my parents proud. They were so happy and they said, study law, get a good job, buy a house with that money. That is the definition of success. And I felt this rush of approval, this feeling of finally doing something right, finally being the hope they needed. And that approval was honestly addictive. So I started law school and it turned out to be nothing like the shows. It was horrible. My peers, everyone around me just cared about partying and meeting up, and nothing made sense to me. And I'd sit in those classrooms thinking, what am I doing with my life? Is this really the life I'm looking for? And the answer was always no. But I couldn't say that because if I said no, I was letting my parents down. I was failing them and I was proving them right that I couldn't stick with anything. Then came the moment that broke everything. A real lawyer came to university to do activities with us and talk about her career. And during the Q&A section, I raised my hand immediately because I had this one question that was really important to me. I asked her, what's the work-life balance like as a lawyer? Because I'd watched my parents work so many hours and barely actually get to live. But when I asked that question, she looked at me and she just bursted out laughing. And she responded with, there isn't one. And that was it. That was the moment the path I'd built for myself, it started to crack. I remember sitting there feeling this weird sensation like you spend so long working towards this one thing and then reality hits you like a truck and you realize this might not be the thing. And you realize you've been chasing someone else's dream this whole time. When I finally told my parents I didn't want to be a lawyer, they didn't take it well at all. They said I'd come back to them in a few years regretting my decision and admit to them that they were right. They were very upset. because, I'd never excelled in school. I'd just gotten by. And now they were probably thinking, here we go again. She's doing the same thing with her career. She's going to fail. Eventually, I got tired of following a path that was handed down as safe, especially when the people promoting it didn't have the results I wanted. I got a job and started saving every single penny, and I was obsessed with it. I'd check my bank account every single day. I'd see where my money was going. I'd cut any necessary spending. I worked in retail, in corporate, selling iPhones, selling clothing, anything I could find. And I was putting it all away because deep down, I knew I wanted to start a business. I knew I wanted something different, and I knew there had to be another way out of this trap that my parents were stuck in. But I was doing it alone, in secret, with no one believing in me. And my parents ashamed of me too, having that weight of their disappointment sitting on my shoulders every single day. And that's where it all started. So I eventually saved up around £8,000. I was hungry, but I didn't have the knowledge. And that's when I started experimenting. I was beginning to burn through my £8,000 and I was getting desperate. I was running out of time and money. And I started to doubt myself. But then I found it. Airbnb arbitrage. The concept was simple but revolutionary to me because I found out that you don't need to own a house to get started in property. You find a landlord who wants guaranteed monthly income without the hassle of managing tenants. You negotiate a monthly rate, let's say £2,000 a month, then you list it on Airbnb and Booking.com at nightly rates, let's say £300 a night, depending on the location. The guest pays you, you pay the landlord, and then you get to keep the difference in between. It is honestly pure leverage. You're controlling an asset without needing to own it. You're generating that cash flow without being rich first. When I understood that model, everything had clicked for me. But understanding it and executing it are two completely different things. Because now I had to actually make it happen. I knew this was my shot. This was the model that could actually work. So I went all in, completely all in. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning before my shifts, before anything. I'd make a list the night before of all the landlords that I need to call. And during my shifts at work, I was standing on my feet for 8 hours. I'd have my phone on the side and I would be texting landlords between customers every single day. Sometimes I'd get caught by my manager, but honestly, I just kept going because I just needed to get out of there. I had to make sure I was speaking to at least 30 new different landlords every single day. That was my target. That was my absolute minimum. I was calling in sick to attend viewings. I was meeting landlords in person because I knew that face-to-face conversations were more powerful than phone calls. I was traveling an hour, sometimes even an hour and a half away from my city nearly every day just to meet a landlord and see their property. I honestly lost count of how many times I was told no, how many landlords didn't believe in me, how many properties just fell through. And regardless of that, I just kept my list. Every single landlord I spoke to, I wrote their name, their number, and their property details, and I just followed up again and again because I knew that persistence was the only thing that would separate me from everyone else. Most people quit after 20 rejections, but I didn't quit. I missed out on everything. Family birthdays, time with friends. I completely isolated myself. I was not going out and I wasn't looking to celebrate either. I was not looking to live a normal life because living a normal life will get you normal results. My friends and my family thought I was just going crazy and I was wasting my time. Everyone around me just told me, Leena, you need to focus on university. You need to have a backup plan. But I couldn't do that because I knew something that they didn't know. You don't get a lot of chances to get rich young. You don't get a lot of chances to have the creativity, the energy, the hunger that you have in your early 20s. Once you're 30 or 40 or even 50, you're tired, you've got responsibilities, you've got a mortgage, you've got a family, you've got obligations, the window just closes. So I literally went all in. And then it happened. A landlord had finally believed in me. He said yes. And that was honestly the moment for me where everything had changed. That first property, that first landlord who believed in me when nobody else did, that was the foundation for everything that came after. Because once I had one property, I had proof of concept. I had the numbers, I had results, I had something to show other landlords. And that made the next conversation easier, and the next one, and the next one. But that first one, the first landlord who took a chance on a 19-year-old girl with no experience, the girl that had failed affordability checks and had no credentials, that changed my life. So suddenly I had a property, but having a property and having a functioning Airbnb unit are two completely different things. I immediately called my best friend Uzma and I told her we should really do this together. And instantly there were no long debates, there was no hesitation or weird energy from her. She believed in it instantly. She didn't stand on the sidelines, she got straight into the trenches with me from day one. And that's something I'm genuinely grateful for, because building this business was not easy, but having someone who backs the vision without needing convincing just made the difference for me. It took me and my business partner Uzma 1 full month to get that unit fully furnished and ready. 1 full month. And it was extremely hard. We were still working multiple jobs on the side, and now we were trying to get this property ready for guests. We learned how to paint, we learned how to do wallpaper, which by the way is way harder than it looks. I was collecting all the furniture in my little car. We would fit a bed frame, a mattress, a wardrobe, chairs, tables, everything just crammed into the car in the back, and we usually left the back of the car open because nothing else would fit. We were driving around the city looking absolutely ridiculous. But honestly, we did not care because we were building something. And finally, the property was ready. We listed it on Airbnb, we set the price, and we waited. I remember being in the property doing some extra paint touch-ups, and then my phone had buzzed, the first booking notification. I remember looking at that notification and my heart just dropped. Someone, a complete stranger, wanted to stay in our property. They wanted to pay us money to sleep in a bed that we had both assembled, in a room that we'd painted, in a space that we had literally built from nothing. It was a £2,000 booking, and honestly, I just broke down. I was standing there with a paintbrush in my hand, with tears streaming down my face. And I wasn't crying because of the money, I was crying because I finally knew that this works. This actually works. But for months, everyone had told me I was crazy. My parents thought that I was throwing my life away, and my friends also thought I was being delusional. And to be honest, I started believing them. I started to doubt myself. But in that moment alone, when I got that £2,000 booking on my phone, that's when I knew that they were all wrong. And I was right. This was not a fantasy at all. This was real. This was the moment that showed me we were actually going to make it. But then reality hit. I realized we couldn't scale if we were cleaning everything ourselves. That's when we started researching, and we came across a term that changed everything for us. And that term was outsourcing. The concept was so simple, but it was really powerful. Outsource tasks that aren't going to generate you more money. Focus on what only you can do. Finding properties, negotiating with landlords, just general strategy. Everything else, delegate it. So we got a handyman on board, we got cleaners, and we got a virtual assistant. We got everything in place, so we were not doing these tasks anymore. We were managing the business now, not doing the work. And when we did that, we managed to get our time back. Suddenly, I wasn't exhausted, and I had the mental space to really think. I could focus on finding the next property instead of scrubbing toilets. We managed to onboard the next property, which added another £3,500 a month into the business. It was easier since we had our first property, and show how we were really serious about this. And after getting our first few properties up and running with the systems in place, I made the decision to quit my job. I didn't give 2 weeks notice, I just sent an email to my manager, and that was it. And to be honest with you, I was extremely terrified. I was making maybe around £9,000 a month from my properties at that point, and my job was paying me around £1,000 a month. So on paper, it did make sense because I was making more from my business. But it didn't feel like it made sense because that job was security. It was guaranteed and safe for me. Whereas my business could fall apart tomorrow. But I also knew something. As long as I had that job, I'd never fully commit to my business. I'd always have one foot out the door. and I treat it as a safety net, and safety nets keep you small. So I quit. And I remember the first week after quitting, I was so anxious and I was just terrified that the bookings would just stop. But they didn't stop. They kept coming. And after a month, I'd realized I'd made the right decision. That was the point where I made a promise to myself. I promised myself that I will never work for someone else again. I will never trade my time for a salary again. This is it. This is going to be my life now. And I really meant it. And from that point on, everything accelerated. We started getting property after property. Each new property added an additional £3,000 and more per month. It was really compounding. Eventually, we got to 15 properties and we were making £45,000 per month, even while we were asleep, while we were on holiday, while we were literally doing anything else. And that's the power of building a system instead of trading your time. Here's where it stops being about money and starts being about what money actually enables. I moved out of my family home and I moved into a huge 5-bedroom house in the countryside with views of sheep in the garden. It had space and a lot of land. It was something that I had never had growing up. This was the kind of house that I'd honestly dreamed about. That moment standing there in that garden, looking at those views, knowing that I'd created this was extremely powerful. But I wasn't done. I moved to Dubai. I got my first Airbnb here in Dubai while also continuing the operations back in the UK. We were now operating across 2 countries in 2 different time zones. And we started to shift our strategy. We stopped charging £100 a night and we started charging over £1,000 a night. At first, we were unsure of this decision. We had 15 properties making £45,000 a month. It was working, but I realized something. We were competing with everyone. There were thousands of properties at that price point. The market was saturated and the margins were so thin. And I was tired of being average. So I made a bold decision that we are going to give all the smaller units back and only focus on luxury. I was literally deciding to walk away from guaranteed profit. But I knew something. The luxury market is less competitive. The margins are better, the guests are more serious, and the revenue per property is exponentially higher. So we did it. We gave back the £100 a night properties. We stopped operating in that market. And we only onboarded the bigger Airbnb projects. It did take time and a lot of strategy, but when we got our first £1,500 a night property, everything changed. The profit margin was 50 to 60% instead of 25%. The guests were more professional. The properties required more attention, but they generated so much more revenue. One property alone would make a minimum of £20,000 a month. And suddenly, we weren't competing with thousands of other hosts. We were in a different league. That decision to stop being average and commit to excellence is what allowed us to scale to 6 figures, to making over £100,000 a month. Most people would have stayed comfortable at that £45,000 a month, but I knew that wasn't the ceiling. That was just the beginning. I bought my mum and dad brand new cars, the cars they'd always wanted but could never afford. I started paying my parents every month. I took my entire family to Hajj and Umrah. My parents had dreamed about going Hajj their entire lives. And for those that don't know, it's the Islamic pilgrimage. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It's something every Muslim wants to do before they die. But it was expensive. It was tens of thousands of pounds. And my parents could never afford it. I remember telling my mum, and honestly, she did not believe me at first. But when she realized that I was serious, she just broke down. And she kept saying, how Leena, how did you do this? You're only 22 years old. And honestly, my dad was the same way. He was so shocked that how I was able to do this at such a young age. Everything was paid for by me. In that moment, everything made sense. All the sacrifices, all the rejections, the sleepless nights, all of it. Because I wasn't just making money, I was changing my family's lives. My parents had spent their entire lives working. They did everything right. They sacrificed everything for me and my siblings, but they still couldn't afford the things that they had dreamt about. And that's what this is really all about. It's not about the money or the cars or the houses. It's about being able to say to your parents, you do not have to worry anymore. I have got you. And I'm going to take you to the place that you've dreamt about all your life. That moment was when I knew I'd made the right decision. That's when I knew that leaving law school was the best decision of my life. Looking back, here's what I've learned that I wish I knew earlier. If I could tell my 19-year-old self one thing, it would be this. Stop waiting for that perfect moment. It does not exist. Everyone thinks I got lucky and everyone thinks I started at the right time, but they don't understand the struggle. They don't see the 6 a.m. wake-ups, they don't see the rejections, they don't see the months I've grinded with nothing to show for it. And all the doubt that I had, all the nights I couldn't sleep because I was terrified I was making a massive mistake. Luck and timing had nothing to do with it. It was doing the thing when nobody else was doing it. And here's what I know now that would have saved me years of pain. Just get the stuff done. Take action sooner. Stop dreaming, stop waiting for a sign. Stop waiting for those perfect conditions because honestly, it does not exist. I see so many people who just expect that their prayers will do the job for them. They pray for their success, they visualize, they talk about success, but they don't do anything. You can pray all you want, you can visualize all you want, but if you're not taking action, if you're not actually doing the work, nothing is going to happen. One thing that I learned is that the universe rewards action only, not intention. The price of staying where you are is higher than the price of change. I sacrificed comfort temporarily, but those sacrifices gave me permanent freedom. I wanted my family's support so desperately, and I wanted them to understand me. I wanted them to believe in the vision that I had, but I couldn't wait for their permission. I had to move forward even when they didn't believe me. And now I've proven it works. They see it now, they get it, and finally now they are proud. But I couldn't have waited for that. I had to be willing to move forward alone. And here's the reality. Your current situation is not permanent. Your background doesn't define your future. Where you came from doesn't determine where you're going to go. The job you have right now isn't your destiny. The money in your bank account right now isn't your ceiling, but only if you take action. And here's what I want to say directly to anyone watching this right now who's in the position that I was in. Scared, doubting yourself, everyone telling you that you're crazy. I want you to do it now. Do it now while you're young, because today is the youngest you'll ever be. There really is no tomorrow. Tomorrow is never guaranteed. We're in 2026 now. How long have you been thinking about that business? How long have you been planning? How long have you been waiting for the right time? The time is only now, not next year, not when you've saved more money, not when you've got more experience, not when the market is better, not when you've got more support. I'm 24 now and I've built a 6-figure per month business in my early 20s. I did it while everyone told me I was crazy. I did it while my family were terrified. I did it while I had nothing. And to be honest, if I had waited, if I had listened to the doubt and started next year, I would probably be a beginner lawyer shadowing someone else making £30,000 a year. Now, if I make £30,000 in a month, that would be a bad month. A lot can change with such little time with full focus. So here's my message to you. The struggle is real, but it is temporary. The fear disappears once you take the first step. But that regret of not trying, that will last forever. Because the person you could become, the person who's built something real, who's changed their family's lives, who's given back to their community, who's proven to themselves what they're capable of, that person is waiting for you. But they're only waiting if you take action. So if you're someone who wants to take action immediately and make 2026 your best year, but you don't know how to, I have free training available in the link in the description, which you can go through. I'll see you in the next video.